Hello, Internet, and thank you very much for tuning into Cloud Native Wisdom, a short video series that you are listening and hearing from on Cloud Native FM YouTube channel. And the topic is today is quite kind of a confusing and quite kind of interesting at the same time. The two GenAI reports that have clashed recently have been the MIT and Wharton report as well. And Richard Simon is here with us drilling on this topic as well because they have some synergies and some kind of a weird pattern here as well. But Richard, I'm taking and not taking any much of the time here explaining what it is because you definitely have some very good wisdom on this topic. So over to you. Tell us what those reports are telling us and how this data is kind of a confusing or rewarding for GenAI startup or listener or reading or anyone.
Sure. Yeah. So the first report from MIT, which is I think the one that really went viral on things like LinkedIn, for example, and everybody really picks up on that and started posting on it and quoting from it and so on. But the one number that everybody really jumped on was, I think it said something like 95% of GenAI projects and pilots that have been done I think over the last either 12 months or 18 months have actually failed or are failing. So the enterprises that were part of the research for the MIT report, that's what that's what the majority of them, 95% of them, said that their projects and a lot of their proof of concepts or pilots, whatever you want to call them, had actually been failing. So everybody really jumped on that 95% number and were reporting that number, and that's kind of what went really viral on the MIT report. Now, I think more or less at the same time, Wharton, which I believe is another university in the US, generated their own report, produced their own report, and their report was actually on the opposite side of opposite side of that kind of spectrum, because they were saying that from their surveys, from their research, 75% of those that were surveyed reported that their GenAI projects were actually succeeding. Now, I think the two were not comparing the same thing. They're not literally saying, did your project succeed, yes or no? It was, I think the MIT one was focusing more on things like ROI and value from the project, whereas I think the Wharton report was more on literal success, I think, of the project. Now, there's a lot more in both of these reports that are absolutely humongous. They're really gigantic reports. So again, we'll make the links to the PDFs available. I've also covered this in the December episode of Class State to Play. So go and check out the December 2025 episode of Class State to Play. We'll be covering and have covered that extensively. Again, both of those reports. So we'll go into a lot more depth on both of those reports and why they kind of the difference there between the two. But needless to say that the LinkedIn influencers and the IT mainstream media, latched on to the MIT report and really advertised and highlighted that more than anything else, than the Wharton report or indeed any other reports that were out there. And I guess that's mainly because they can put out more negativity around generative AI, and that maybe gets them more eyeballs in terms of people reading their reports and posts and things like that. So I guess it was kind of more controversial to say GenAI is failing rather than saying, hey, GenAI is succeeding. So yeah, I think my point here is that as I said, I've covered it in the December 2025 episode of Class State to Play, and we do make the same point there, is that you shouldn't always believe the hype. Don't always believe the hype on these things. Don't always believe stuff that's on LinkedIn. Look at who is actually making the statement, making the claim, before you can actually jump to any conclusions in regards to that, and see if there's actually any opposing points of view in regards to that. So again, a good example from the AWS outage recently was that somebody conflated two different news items. So they conflated the AWS outage with Amazon Inc. So that's the Amazon shopping part of Amazon, the Amazon Corporation, making, laying off people, making people redundant. I think 15,000 jobs were made redundant, sort of, I think during the summer or at the end of the summer sort of period of 2025. And then what this report did by this LinkedIn influencer was he conflated the two, and he said, "Oh, the outage happened, and AWS couldn't recover from it quickly enough because they had made a lot of their own people redundant. They had made a lot of AWS people redundant." Whereas actually, in my understanding of the press releases and some of the news items around the redundancies by Amazon Inc., it was actually a middle management layer. That's where most of the redundancies were actually made, and this was again adjustments due to COVID and lockdowns, when they obviously hired a lot more people that they required around that time. So there's a lot of this kind of FUD, this fear, uncertainty, and doubt that kind of people put out. And my point is that that you shouldn't really kind of always believe the hype. Go and do your own research. Go and look at opposing points of view, which is what I tend to do. I tend to put out lots of these kind of different view, alternative view to something, and saying, did you really think about this? Do you have evidence for what you're saying, and so on? Because I try to evidence everything that I kind of put out, even though it might be wrong or my opinion may not be. People may not agree with it, my opinion. That's fine, but at least I can back it up. I've got reports, I've got data. Whereas these people are kind of conflating the shedding of these jobs by Amazon Inc. with the AWS outage, and I think that's on any day, I think that's unfair. So we need to be professional. We need to be honest with our reporting and what we actually say, because a lot of people will be influenced by this. And that's why these people are called LinkedIn influencers. They influence the opinions of other people and the point of view of other people. So we need to be really accurate with our reporting and not just put stuff out because that gives us some eyeballs onto our posts.
Yes, absolutely. Totally agree with you, because I think in terms of the Gen AI reporting and the marketing in term of it's always been a concern always, because some people say we are in the bubble in the economic side of the AI, but
Yeah.
and on the flip side, we know how important is the AI, how important. And the one thing we in the tech ecosystem we always talk about, and we recorded a separate episode on this one, how the AI can help in the cloud migration, how AI can help in the adoption of all the necessary tooling we have. So I think it's always been being a vocal person in the industry around those topic is very important. And when you say something, a lot of the listeners are actually thinks you have some sort of background story for this one, and that's why you creating a hypothesis around it. And you don't have some data, the results are very negative, and people will go with the flow and end up falling off into the trap as well. That's a huge area of risk assessment in the trends. I think we have to do it all the time as well. And I think in terms of hype in journal reporting, I think if you look at the internet today, all the models exist today in the Gen AI world. Oh, Grok is number one. Oh, Mistral is number one. Oh, GPT-5 is actually taking all the and all beated all other AI model LLMs. Oh, there's Anthropic one, or Claude Code one. There's actually beated everyone. So I think it's in the marketing is absolutely chaotic in the AI as well. And we have been very vocal on what we tell in our YouTube channel. It took a huge amount of investment of the time, and we actually learn all of these things from our wonderful expert appear in the YouTube channel as well. So it's really tough for the content creator in itself doing the work alongside with those two items to being able to trace the very focused information that have a very viable data to back it up. So it's tough. I think in 2026 our job is going to be more tougher than ever. But I think it's, as you pointed out on the two report from the Wharton and the MIT, we have this tell us the story of winner and loser always has their own theory that they tell to their audience about what their version of the winning and the losing are. And we need to be on the end user side. It's been to finding a favorable side that give us a concrete roadmap for the 2026. But as always, thank you very much, Richard, for joining me and sharing your thoughts on always a toughest topic in the ecosystem. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Stay safe. Bye bye, and we'll meet you again with another wisdom episode.